Hello good people and welcome to Finance Skills Hub. Here we learn, we connect and we grow. In an earlier video, we showed you how you can create a dynamic debtors aging report in Excel. We use Power Query, Power Pivots and DAX formulas to make it dynamic. We had good feedback from you, and one of the suggestions was to be able to create the same aging report in Power BI. We also had a suggestion to be able to add a payment tracker to be able to reconcile payments on outstanding invoices. Well, we've taken up that challenge, and in this video, we want to show you how to create the same debtors aging report to be able to track payments on invoices and also add a progress chart so that you can see for a particular client how much of the outstanding has been realized, or even for the entire organization. So if you're game, join me in Power BI and let's get started. Okay, so in the end, we want to create a simple debtors aging report like what you see on your screen. It will show us total invoices, total paid out of the invoices, and the total outstanding. We are able to also create a slicer to show all the various clients that we deal with. So I can select a particular client to see the details of these three indicators. I also have a progress chart that shows the total paid out of the outstanding invoices and then the total percentage realized based on the client that I've selected. Below, I have a detailed debtors aging report that shows the invoice numbers that belong to the client that I have selected. It's also broken down by the timelines. The ones that are not due are split into paid and outstanding. Then we have those due between 1 to 30 days, 31 to 60, 61, 90 plus, and so on. Then an aggregation of all these. Okay, so this reconciles with the total outstanding per client. I can look at this by client. I can look at it entirely across the organization. Okay, now this is taking data from an Excel workbook, which we have shared with you. So you can visit the YouTube description of the video. You find the download link there. Download and come along. Let's start this together. Okay, so we begin with our invoice data. So this is the table that has all the details of the invoice that we've sent out. We have invoice number, invoice date, the description of the service that was rendered, the due date, the gross amount, and then the client that this was sent to. Right? This is a table. So the table has been named invoices to make it easier for us to query. You can add on so that automatically whatever changes happen here would also update in your Power BI report. So this is our first table. Then to the right is the lookup for our aging timelines, right? So those between 1 to 30, 31 to 60, 90 plus, we are going to look up with these values, okay? Then we also have this cell here, which is named reporting, okay? Now, if you refer to the earlier Excel video, what we did here is to make the timeline for reporting flexible. So here you can change the date to go back retrospective. You can even push it forward to get an idea how maybe end of year is going to look like if all things look the same. Otherwise, you could always use the dates that you are reporting on, which is today, which is the current date to do your reporting. So whatever date you put here is going to be used to calculate the outstanding days, right? This has been named reporting. Then on the next sheet, we have a simple table that tracks the payments on the invoices. Okay, so here for the clients that have paid, we have their invoice numbers, the company, and the gross amount. This also accommodates multiple payments. So you just have to record using the invoice numbers and you should be fine. So the basic idea is that this table, which has all the payments, is going to be reconciled with the outstanding invoices, and that will give us the outstanding for each client. Okay, so with these named tables, that is invoice, the aging, and the payments, which are all tables, and the reporting cell, and the cell here named reporting, we'll go to Power BI and then query all these and then start our process. So let's go to Power BI. Okay, so here I'm in a new Power BI report. So we start off by getting the data. So we are getting it from an Excel workbook. So I'll click Excel workbook. So this brings me to my folder, right? So I'll I'll open this. Now, this opens up Power Query. So once it loads, I get the navigator to preview the names of the tables, the worksheets, and all the things that I'm going to use. So as I mentioned earlier, we have a table for aging. So I'll need this table. Then I also need a table for invoices, a table for payments, right? So note the difference between tables and worksheets, right? These are the worksheet names. So we use the tables. Now, the reporting cell is also here as a named cell. So I'm going to commit that one as well. So these are the 4 things that we are going to use. Now, once I have this, I'm going to transform data. Okay, so if I come to transform data, this gives me the queries on the left. So my agent is here. So invoices, let me make this invoice without a suffix, right? I have my payments. So again, one thing you need to be sure about is to make sure the data type and all the columns that you need are present. Okay, now the first thing that we need to do is to be able to calculate the number of days outstanding on each invoice. Okay, so this is going to be done in the invoice table. So using the due dates, which is the column here, I'm basically subtracting the due dates from today's date. Okay, so if it's in the past, it calculates the number of days that are outstanding. So this is 31st May. How many days has gone by since the due date? Okay, so I stand on the due date column. To calculate the difference, I'll go to add column, right? Then I'm going to use this date icon. So age is going to do the subtraction for me using today's date and that date. So I'm going to use that, and this gives me the new age column because I was in the add column tab. Okay, now this is using today's date, but we don't want to always use today's date for the subtraction. We want to use the referenced reporting cell. Okay, so if you look carefully in the formula that we got in the M code, you realize that there's dates time.local now, this one. Okay, that is what is using your current date. Now I want to replace this with whatever date is in the reporting cell. Okay, so to do that, we'll come to the reporting query. Okay, this is the current date in there. To be able to use the output, I'll have to drill down. So I'll right click on the cell and then choose this drill down, right? This now gives me the option to use the output directly. So the name of this output is going to be called reporting. So I'll come back to my invoices, then carefully selecting this portion of the formula. Okay, so date time.local now, where the first closing bracket ends, right? We replace that with reporting, which is now accessible here. Okay, so I'll press enter. I really don't expect any change, right? So this is the same dates. So now that we have this, we need to format this properly as a whole number. So I'm going to do that. So these are the number of days that has elapsed since the due date. Okay, you'll notice that for those that are not due yet, those dates that are in the future, we have some negative numbers, which is fine. So the next thing that we need to do is to find the appropriate label, right? So if it's 134, which bin or which range does it fall into? So we are going to do a lookup on the agent table. Okay, so for those that are 90 plus, okay, we get a 90 plus label and so on. To be able to do that, we need to bring this table into the invoices table, and that process is called merging, right? So to merge, I'm going to stand in the invoices table, go to home, and then we have merge queries here, right? So we'll do the merge queries directly in there. So I'll click on merge queries. Okay, so this is doing it on the existing query. My first table is what I started with. My second table is going to be the agent table. Okay, normally when you are doing merging, you need to have at least one column that match in both tables. So for a matching column, this is going to be age up here, which is the number of days, and then we'll use days in the second one, which is also represented the number of days, the beginning point. likely you're not going to have an exact match. So what you need to do is you come to the join kind, and we are going to do a full outer join, right? Which means it's going to bring the rows from both tables. Okay. So once you've done that, it's still okay if you have 0/16. Then we'll click OK. Okay. So in my current view, I now have the table aging added to my existing table. If you see this icon, it means it is expandable. There are columns in there that you can access. So I'm going to click on this. I have my 2 columns from the aging table. I'll uncheck the use original column as prefix and then click OK. Okay, so after expanding, if you look towards the far right, you realize that the details of your second table, aging and days, are here. Now, so what we need to do is to put age and days, okay, which are basically days, the same kind of attribute or the same kind of data, number of days, in one column. Okay, so this top part will stay, and then we'll add the one from the second table into the same column. To be able to do that, we need to create a custom column. Okay, so let's start creating that custom column. So I'll select one column to have this active. I'll come to conditional column. Then the rule is this: if this age, okay, so this column age, right, is equal to now, then I want to bring the value in the days column, right? So if this is equal to now, then I want to select a column, so I'll choose select column and then bring the days column. Okay, so basically what I need to do is, in the event this is now, which is this bottom part, then bring this value in the custom column you are creating. Otherwise, return the original column, right? So the else is going to be a select column, and then we are going to return the original column, which is age. Okay, so this is the conditional column. We'll go ahead and then click OK. So this custom column now brings the 2 day values, okay, into one. Now, the first thing that you need to do is to change the data type. So we will change this to a whole number, and we will sort this in ascending order. The reason we are doing this is to have all the labels positioned correctly. So we are going to use this label to be able to assign the right label to each record. So I'll select the column and come to home. Then under the sorts column here, I'll sort ascending. Okay, so when I do it this way, I have the ones that are not due on top, followed by 1 to 30, 31 to 60, and so on. Now, the column that is important to us is this column, because it has all the labels, right? So we are going to take the position of each label and fill down, right? So I'll right click this, go to fill, and fill down, right? So this way we have all the labels correctly positioned. At this point, we can take off the instances of now. Okay, so I'll come to any of the columns, select age, and then uncheck now. Okay, so once I do this, I now have something close to the table that I'm looking for. At this point, we will not need these last 2 columns, days and custom. So I'll right click this, remove these columns, these last 2, right? So you notice that for the ones that are in the future, right, they are reporting negative numbers, but the ones that are already due, they have the positive numbers with the right labels against them. Now, for purposes of visualization, we will not leave this as now. We would replace the now values with not due. So I'll right click and choose replace values. So I'll replace now with not due, and I'm going to click OK, right? Then rename this agent. Okay. So this is the table that we are going to use to be able to know the various labels for each outstanding number of days. Okay. So we are almost done with our query. We have our aging, which is here. We have our invoices, which now has pulled in the right labels. We have our payments, and then we have our reporting. We are going to load, okay, but for our loading purposes, we really will not need this reporting name. So I'm going to right click on this and disable the load, right? So I'll click on this to disable the load, so it doesn't come along in the Power BI report. It will still be refreshing though. So I'll come to home and click on close and apply. Okay, so it's finished loading our report into Power BI. So the next step is to be able to connect the different tables from the query so we can have a responsive data model. To be able to do that, I'll come to the model view, the third icon here. So I'll click on it. Now you'll notice that Power BI has already done the connection for us, but you need to understand what is happening here. So this is your invoices table. This is also the agent table. And then for the purposes of this is our fact table, the one that collects the payments. Okay, so let me just delete these lines so that you appreciate how to do this from scratch. Okay, so assuming these were not automatically connected, what do we need to look out for? Right, so if I click on a particular invoice, I need it to be able to filter the payments table, right? So the common column between these two is the invoice number. So I have invoice number here, and I also have invoice number here, right? So I'll click on this and then just map or connect it to the invoice number over here. Now I get the detailed view. So you realize that the invoice number on top in the invoices table is now connecting to my invoice number here. This is a 1-to-1 currently, but we can also have a situation where we have multiple invoices for one client, right? I'm going to change this to a 1-to-many, okay, and then make the direction a single one that flows from the invoices to filter the payments. And I'll go ahead and then click on save. Okay, so this is going to be the connection from the invoices to our payments. Okay, so let's understand how we are going to connect the aging and the invoices. Now, if you look at the table, okay, there's a column that has the various day thresholds. Okay, so 130, 161, and so on. These ones are unique. There are no duplicates. Okay, so it's going to be mapped directly to the calculation of the days outstanding. Right, so you remember these two have the same data type. That's the number of days. So in this case, I'm going to drag this and then connect it to the age that has been calculated here. Right, so if you look closely, we have the number of days right here. So this is going to be a 1-to-many. We will maintain the filter direction for a single. So I'll click on save. Okay, so this is how the tables are going to be connected to make them responsive. Okay, so now that we've finished this, let's go to our report view and then see how we are going to create our final report. We need to create our measures, right? So essentially there are three main measures, which is the aggregate or sum of all the gross values in the invoices. We also will sum the total paid from the payments table, and then from these two we'll get the total outstanding by subtracting the two, right? So let's create a dedicated table for our measures. So to do that, I'll come to modeling, then I'll come to the new table option here. So when I click on it, it opens up the formula bar. So what I'm going to basically do is I'll bring a square bracket, okay, space, and then type in measures. So this way I can have a table, empty table called measures, which can be used to store all my measures. You bring an equal sign and then you press enter. Okay. So once I do this, I have a measures table up here. Now from this measures table, let's calculate our first measure. So I'll right click this, go to new measure. So the first calculation is going to be invoices. Then the calculation is going to be a sum of the invoices table on the gross amounts. Okay, so I'll close this and then press enter. Okay, so this first measure now stays in my table. Let's see what we have. We can visualize this by dragging the calculation into the canvas. Okay, so we have 3.34 million. Okay, so repeat the same calculation for our total payments. This time around is coming from the payments table. So I'll right click this, start a new measure. So in the formula bar, I'll call this paid. Then it's going to be a sum from the payments table on the gross amount. I'll close my brackets and then I'll press enter. So my second measure is here, which is paid. So I'll click and then drag this into the canvas as well. So for our paid, we have 536,000. So now the difference between these two. So again, I'll right click, new measure. So this is going to be outstanding. We have two measures already, so just a simple subtraction. So I'll take my invoices and then subtract paid from it, right? Bringing it up with a square bracket, and I'll press enter and then drag this right here. Okay, so as expected, we now have the total invoices, the total paid, and the total outstanding, right? So these are the three key measures that we need. Now, if you look at our final work, we have room for a progress chart, right, which basically shows us how much has been realized, right, as a numerator of the outstanding. Okay, so to be able to do that, we need to calculate two percentages. A percentage of how much has been paid over how much has been invoiced, right? And then we'll down do a 1 minus to also get the unrealized portion. These two calculations are what we are going to use to create this progress chart. So let's get that done. So to create the percentage realized, okay, we are going to start a new measure. So right click this, new measure, and then we'll call this, realized. So this is going to be the paid, okay, divided by the total invoices, okay, right. There's a more direct way to divide, but it's not advisable. It's best to use the dedicated divide function, okay. So that one takes the numerator and the denominator and also gives you the option for an alternate result if there's an error, okay. So here you can put in a double quotes representing a blank. I'll close my brackets. So I'll press enter. So this value should be a percentage. So if I click on realized, I can click on this percentage icon to format it. So let's see what we get when we drag this. So I'll take this here and then bring it into the canvas. So for the entire organization, we have 16.06%, right? So now that we have this, let's now create the unrealized, which is going to be the inverse. So we'll do a 1 minus this. So I'll come here, right click, new measure, and we'll go to unrealized. So this is going to be 1 minus the earlier calculation that we did. Okay, and then I'm going to press enter. So this now gives me the unrealized. So if I format this also as a percentage, the expectation is that at every point in time, these two should give me 100%. Okay, so I have these two, right? So essentially, these are all the calculations that we are going to use to create our visual. So now that we have this, let's bring in our slicer for the clients. So I'll come here and then insert a slicer. So this is the placeholder for my visual, and I'll add the data to the visual. So here I'm getting this from the invoices in the column called company, okay, which shows the different clients. So for client A, so if I select each client, okay, I'm able to see the outstanding invoice, the payments, and all that for the client. If I don't select any, then I have this, okay. So this is how we are going to proceed. Now at this point, we can transform all these and then turn it into our final visual. Okay, so now that we have created all the key measures for our report, let's switch to visualization. So let me give you an idea on what we have to do. So first, we have calculated the key measures. We'll bring in a PowerPoint background that would help us fix these appropriately. so that they will have placeholders to give them a bit of context in terms of the design. So we'll do that. We'll convert our current calculation, which is a realized and unrealized, into a 100% bar chart. So that will be done. We'll format our slicer. Then we'll also put in a card for the realized, which is the key insight we want from the bar. Then we'll proceed and create this dynamic matrix visual that will show us the detail of every client. It will break down the invoices and also place the values under the right timeline. Okay, so whether it's not due 130, 31, 60 and all that, right? The way we've designed this, even if there's no data for the client, it maintains the column display for all the different timelines. Okay, so that is what we hope to achieve. Now let's get to it. So the first thing that we need to do here is to bring in our matrix. Okay, so for our matrix, I'll come insert the matrix from here. Okay, so this is the matrix visual. So I'll bring it up here. It basically requires us to fill in our row, column, and value, similar to pivot tables in Excel. Okay, so I have the row side is going to be the invoices. So I'll click on Add Data. So we are getting our invoice numbers from the invoices table. So when I go down, I'll check invoice number. So this will come on the left side. Okay, so after bringing in the invoice numbers, we need to now bring in the columns. So basically for the columns, we want to break down the outstanding by the right aging label. Whether it is not due, it falls between 1 to 30 days, 31 to 60 and all that. We can find that in the agents table, right? So if I come to the aging table, you realize that I have aging and days. Now, there's something that we need to fix. If you remember, when we were creating the data model, we did a connection with the days column, right? But now in this visual, we want to display by the aging column. So if I do this aging, what I'm going to get is a blank. Now the reason I'm getting that is that the days column that we used, okay, is not really getting an exact match on the other side of the table, right? So aging and invoices, those numbers are not agreeing. So we need to switch the connecting columns to aging. We can fix that, right? We should have done it earlier, but for learning purposes, just to show you how you can go back to the data model and then fix things if you have to. So let's see how to do this. So we'll take a little detour. We'll come to the model view. Okay, so in the model view, this is what we have. Now, the change that we want to do here is between aging and invoices. As I indicated, we did it earlier on days and age, which were just the raw numbers. Now, to edit this, you can double click on the line, right? Or you can right click and then choose properties. So when I come here, you realize that the age calculation, which is here, is matching the days thresholds, the minimum points in the aging table. We want to switch this. So instead of using this, we'll come to aging, the label, right? And then match it with the corresponding aging column here. Okay, the relationship is going to be maintained at many to one, many on this invoices side and then the one on the aging side. We'll maintain the cross filter and then we'll make this relationship active. So I'll go ahead and then save this. So hopefully with this correction, once we come back to the report, let's see what we have. We now have the columns showing, right? But not all the labels are showing. Again, we'll fix that. But for this purpose, let's proceed and then bring in the value section. So for the value section, we want to see the outstanding, not just the outstanding, but the paid and the outstanding. So I'll come to the measures and then bring in paid. Okay, then also bring in outstanding. So I have my table in this form. Let me put this in focus mode so that you appreciate what is going on. So in focus mode, you realize that there's a first set which has paid and outstanding is blank. The reason it's blank is that for those that are not due, we can't find or we haven't made provision for a label yet in the original table that we started with. So we need to fix that. Now it jumps to 31 to 60 where it splits it again into paid and outstanding. Right here, it's also skipping 1 to 30. we need a situation where even if the data is not available, it will still show the full set of all the labels. Okay, so we need to find a way to fix that. Then 61 to 90 and so on. So let's first try and bring in the not due. Now, to do this, what we basically need to do is to go back to the original Excel workbook. Now, in original Excel workbook, we didn't make provision for blanks. That is the null that we use to represent the not due. Okay, so if that is the case, we'll come here. This is a table, so I'll come and I'll do not due. So I'll type not due to represent all the ones that are now. Okay, so once I do this and I save my workbook, I'll close it and then come to my Power BI file and refresh this. Okay, so if I do that on refresh, I now expect the not due to show up for the ones that are not due. Okay, so as you can see, because I just refreshed, okay, we now have the set for not due with its paid and outstanding showing right here. Okay, now you can choose to maintain the not due at the tail end of your report, but sometimes we want to arrange this chronologically. So what if I want the not due to be the first set, right? So again, we can go back to the Excel sheet. So I'm back to the Excel sheet, right? Now all I need to do is add a sort column. So in a sort column, I can now manually assign the order that I want this to appear in the final matrix visual. So not due will come first, followed by 1 to 30, 3, 4, and 5 in that order, right? So once I do this, and again, I save it, okay, I'm going to close this Excel workbook. So once I come back to my Power BI and I click on refresh, okay, what is going to happen is if I go to the table view and I select the aging, right, the column that I put in the Excel appears here, right? But we need to now use this column to sort how the aging labels appear. So I'm going to select the aging label under column tools, right? Look out for sort by column. And then we are going to sort it by the order we have in the sort. Okay, so I'll use the sort. Now, if I come back, the expectation is that not due should now move to the first position. But you realize that even though not due has moved to the first position, we are missing the 1 to 30 label, right? It is so because based on our current selection, there's no data for 1 to 30. We can fix that. So we can make it show even if it doesn't have data. Now the reason it's not showing is that when there's no data, it's showing blanks. But instead of blanks, we can force it to show zeros so that the label appears. We'll just modify the key measures that are populating the visual, which in this case is paid and outstanding, right? And then just add a little tweak to the measure. So I'll take outstanding, I'll click on outstanding. We already have invoices minus paid. Okay, so we just add a +0 to this. Okay, so once we do a +0, this should now force the 1 to 30 to appear, even if it is blank. We'll do same for the paid. So for the paid, we'll add a +0 here, and then again, it just fills in like that. Okay, so this will now give us the full complement of our visual. So just as we have it, we'll start with the not due, paid and outstanding. We'll move on to the next one, 1 to 30 days paid and outstanding, 31 to 60 paid and outstanding, and then on and on we go. So now that we have this, let's attempt to make it a bit easier on the eye. So I'm going to go through the formatting for this. I'll click on the paintbrush, come to more options, okay, and then let's take this step by step. Now for the matrix visual, there's a latest update called layout and style presets. So over here, I get the option to maintain the default style, which is the one we are used to, or we can choose from other custom styles that have been set here. Okay, so you can take your time and go through. But what we want is to use the none. Okay. Now, the reason we are using the none is it makes your background a bit more transparent. Okay. Then you also have the option to change the layout from compact to outline or tabular, just as we have in pivot tables, right? In our layout, we can change it to tabular. It wouldn't really affect it, but just for you to know that this exists, right? So once we are done with this, we can now come to the grid and then bring in the horizontal grid. So for the horizontal lines, and then we could also come in and also activate the vertical grid lines. Okay, so this will put in some lines in the plain background. Now we also want to modify the headers, right? Now before I do this, what we basically want to achieve is to put in a green fill, okay, and then put in some data bars in here as well. So to achieve that, it will be appropriate at this point to change the theme of my Power BI report so that I can use that nice green color throughout. Now to change the theme, I can come to view. Okay, this is the list of themes. The one that I like is the classic theme. So the fourth in the first row. So I'm going to click on this. So it changes especially the font size for what we have. But what is important here is that we have access to that consistent green color. So let's come back to our visual. Click on the paintbrush, come to more options, right? So we ended on the grid. So this is where we made the last change. Now, because the font size has gone down a bit, we can increase it to about 10. Okay, so currently it's set to 8. Let's increase it to 10. So I'll bring this to 10 for the main content, right? So that is set to 10. Now, once you've done this, it is important you match the column headers and then the rows to the same font size. So I'll come to the column header and then increase this one by 2 points to 10. So that would affect the column headers that we have over here. Then I'll come to the row header and then increase this one to 10. Okay, so that will be on the row side. So again, we have something like this. Now, while we are here, we can take advantage of the column header settings, okay, and then put in the background, right? So under the column headers, you have the option to change the background color. So our theme now shows that green color. So we use the green color here and then make the text white. So we'll choose white for this one, right? So this now gives us that nice contrast, green background and then a white font. Now you realize that for each label there's paid and outstanding. So let's take advantage of the header alignment and center the labels on each. Okay, so we now have paid and outstanding for each label, nicely centered. So we now have our visual looking like this. Now let's put in data bars for our outstanding numbers so that we are able to track the outliers. Okay, so to be able to do that, while we are here, we'll just go all the way down to cell elements. Okay, so for cell elements, it allows you to apply the format to the particular series that you want. In this case, we have 2, which is the paid and the outstanding. So I'll switch to outstanding, right? I have the option for background color, font color. I'm going to switch on data labels. Okay, so when you do it this way, visually you're able to see the outliers. Okay, so those are the steps that we use to go through the formatting of our visual. So at this point, we can now go in and do our 100% stacked bar chart. So for our progress charts, we use these 2 numbers. So I'm going to delete the 2 cards that we already have and then stacked, and then bring in the visual for the 100% stacked bar chart, which is here. Okay, so this is going to be the placeholder for that visual. I'm going to stretch it all the way to the right. So we have something like this. Now, this is going to be populated on the x-axis. So on the x-axis, I'll come in here and go to my measures table. First put in realized, okay, and then add unrealized, right? So the way we've calculated this, we always expect the two to come to 100%. Now, let's go to the format. So I'll click on the paintbrush. We'll take off the title and we'll also take off the legend, okay? So we have something like this. So at this point, I think we have enough to bring in the PowerPoint background, which will now allow us to fit in all the labels that we have in our report. So the PowerPoint slide has been made available in the stat file as well. So when you come here, these are regular shapes, okay? So it has a white fill and then a bit of shadow on the edges to make it stand out. We've also formatted the background with a soft gray for contrast, okay? So basically what you need to do is, once you have this PowerPoint, you save it as an image file, JPEG, PNG, or SVG. So let me just go through that process. So save as, and then instead of a PPTS, I'm going to save this as a JPEG, and then just save this, right? So just note where you saved it. You just choose this one. So your file is saved. Now when you come to your Power BI, all you need to do is click on the blank canvas, any blank space in the canvas, or you can right click and then choose Format Canvas. Okay, so this will bring you to the canvas background settings, allowing you to lift the image that you just saved. So click on Browse and now navigate to where you saved that image. I have mine here, so I'll just click Open. Usually when you bring in the image, you won't see it initially because the transparency is set to 100%. So all you need to do is reduce that transparency to 0, and you now have your background showing, which now gives you the option to nicely place each of the indicators, right? So at this point, let's start from the top. So I'm going to resize this total invoices. So basically all you need to do is ensure that it fits in the space, that's the background. Okay, so I'll just do this. Now take off the category label because we already have a title, right? Then I'll do same for the paid. So what is important here is that you align them nicely. So this should be aligned using the red lines as a guide. Okay, fit this also here. And again, I'm going to take off the category label for this one. And finally, I'll come to the total outstanding. Again, ensure that you align it using the red guides. Okay, make sure it sits in the placeholder. And once this is in here, I'll take off the category label. Okay, so that is what we have for the 3 indicators. Now, while we are here, let's format our slicer. So I'll bring my slicer. I'll click on the paintbrush, go to more options. We'll take off the slicer header. We already have a title. Then we'll come to slicer settings. Instead of vertical list, we want to use the tile. Okay, so for the tile, it's responsive to your alignment. So just push it a bit up so that you can have all the 3 in one horizontal line. Okay, now while we are here, we'll still go down to the value section here, which allows us to add the background color. Okay, so because we are using the green theme, I'll come to the background and choose the green color for the background, right? Again, we change the font color to white for contrast. Okay, so when you do it this way, when you select a particular client, you notice that the color stands out. Okay, so that is how we are going to format this slicer. Now, let's come in and then align our progress charts. Okay, so this is a 100% stacked bar chart. All we need to do is make sure it's well positioned in this bar, in this background. Okay, Now, the key takeaway for this visual is how much we have realized. Okay, so currently it's showing 29.28%. We want to keep this chart very plain and simple and drop that key insight into the circle. Okay, so in this circle, we are going to drop the card. So this will show the 29.28%, which is the key takeaway. So I'll come to my measures table and then click on realized and then drop it right here. When I do that, it's going to create a card out of this. Okay, so for this purpose, we are going to maintain the category label because we don't have a title for this, right? So just be sure this is working. When I click, you notice that the bars move, the indicators move, and it also shows me the correct label for the client that I have selected. Okay, so at this point, let's just format our table. So our table can now be stretched a bit on the page side. Just ensure that you don't overdo it so that you don't have to scroll horizontally. Okay, so this is now our table. So as long as it sits in that space, I think it should be fine. So now if I select the client, you notice that all my labels are intact from not due 1 to 30, 31 to 60, 61 to 90. We maintain that. We can look at this across all clients as well. Okay, so basically that is what we wanted to achieve. Hopefully you've learned some new tricks on how you can take this from your Excel workbook. As long as you update the Excel workbook with the right records, new invoices, new payments, on refresh, your Power BI report should also update. So as usual, the start file has been shared with you, the Excel workbook, the PowerPoint slide. Hopefully you can use these tools to come along step by step. And I'm sure you should be able to create something a bit more exciting. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you in the next video.
If this video was helpful and you would like to receive more of these videos directly on your WhatsApp, you can send ad to this WhatsApp number. We'll add you to our broadcast list so you receive our videos directly. You can also visit our YouTube channel, Finance Skills Hub. All our old videos are here. Please subscribe for notification of new videos or connect with us on any of these social media handles. Thank you so much for watching.